Hi, in this video, we will see how to use AWS CDK for Python to deploy infrastructure in AWS account. So here, as you see in this PPT depicts my demo here. So here we're going to use AWS Cloud Deployment or basically Development Kit, generally called as AWS CDK of Python to deploy the AWS infrastructure in AWS account. So here in this video, we will see that, what are all the prerequisites that you need to install in your system, and then how to basically bootstrap the particular project CDK project, then how to invoke the project so that it actually spin up the infrastructure in the AWS accounts. So we're going to see these steps, how to build the project, how to run the project, how to update the project, right? So we're going to see all the details in this video. So let me first take you to the next, that is basically to my VS Code. So we are in the VS Code here. In this VS Code, what I have is basically I have a repository in the GitHub called AWS CDK Labs. So in this one, I have created a file called readme.md file. In the readme.md file, I have documented the commands and the steps that you need to follow in a serial manner so that you actually learn how does the AWS CDK for Python works, and you understand that and how you can use CDK as infrastructure as a code. So here what we do is, I'm going to help you with from scratch to end how to set up, how to run, and how to destroy as well. So here what we do is, the first prerequisite here is you need to have npm installed in your system. To verify if npm is installed in your system, you can run a command called npm-v. So if you run this command, it actually returns the version, which means that npm is installed in your system. Once that is been done, what you can do is you can run the next command, that is basically install the AWS CDK for basically AWS CDK foundation modules, you can call it. Yeah. So to do that, you need to run a command npm install -z AWS CDK. So this is basically a ground package that you need to install in your system. On top of this one, you need to install the further basically the plugins that is required to interact with the AWS services like SKSQ. Then you need to install the S3. I'm just talking about the plugins that you can install on AWS CDK so that you can interact with the AWS API through AWS CDK here, right? So the next command is, so once we are done with the installing the AWS CDK, next command is to set up the context of your AWS account. So here we are using the AWS CLI context, or basically AWS CLI session will be reused by the AWS CDK to interact with the AWS account, and then it will actually deploy the project or deploy the infrastructure. So we can configure here now, that is AWS CLI, that is by running a command AWS configure, and then you're going to follow the command line that is providing the access key ID, secret access key, region, and then the default output format. So once this has been done, you are done with the setting the AWS context. You can validate the AWS context by running a command called AWS SDS get caller identity. So this is the command which can help you to actually verify if you have set the context properly or not. I have typed the command wrong, that is basically caller identity. So once you run the command like this, it should return something. If you see here, it is returning the IAM user, which is I have created for the programmed access purpose. I'm using this account ID. Here in the next command, I'm constructing a command called CDK bootstrap. So here CDK bootstrap is much needed prerequisite command that you need to execute before you start with the project. So let's run this command, which I have constructed with using my account number and the region of my interest as well. So if I go to my AWS account, so this is my AWS account currently, so we don't have any stack. And if I go to the queue, we don't have any queue. So basically, with using AWS CDK in this video, we're going to spin up the SQS service, right, as an example infrastructure as a code. Okay, so let me go back to the command line where I was showing you. So now we are actually bootstrapping the CDK by running a command. So let me basically make it a bit up here. So we are doing a CDK bootstrap by running this kind of command. So when you run it at your site, so you need to change the account number and region of your interest, right? So now you see here, it is basically bootstrapped it. You should able to see some output, something like this, which is good. The next command is basically, we need to construct a project folder, and within the project folder, we need to run the next commands. Why do we need to create a particular project folder? Basically, remember that, the AWS CDK works in a basically, ideal folder environment where it actually uses that folder name as the basically foundational name to deploy the stack on the AWS account, right? So for that case, we need to create a folder here, which is basically a best practices as well. So you can run a command called make dir, or basically make the directory called demo CDK lab for basically Python. Yeah. So Python, let me call it as a Python 1. Yeah. So let me make this particular directory. So we have created this directory. Now what I do is I'm going to cd to this particular directory. I did cd to this particular directory. Then you can go ahead and init the CDK. So don't worry about the commands which I'm executing, because we are the human beings. We cannot always keep these commands in a mind. You need to have a reference file. So I'm going to share this, the link of this particular file in the video's description. You can find it from there and try to use it from your side. So if I go to the, so here, right now we have created the folder. Now we did a cd to this particular path. Then what we are doing is we are actually running a next command, that is cdk init. So I'm going to run that command here, that is cdk init. Remember that you are actually putting a language, that is Python. So what happens is when you run this command, if you see here in the left hand side, that command has created a big size folder structure, or basically it set up the project. It basically set up the project source code that you can run it on an independent virtual environment. So that environment, it is ready, right? Which is very great actually, and it helps the developer very at a great extent. Let me quickly walk you through the output, what it is actually has given, so that you understand that what you have to do in the next steps. Basically, this command is actually helps you to educate. Basically, this is actually educating you to how to use the next commands to actually deploy the CDK project. So if you see here, basically it is telling you that to manually create a virtual environment in Mac OS or Linux, you can run this command. Then so basically then it is, these are all the commands for Mac OS that you can try it from your side if you have a Mac OS. Since my system is Windows, so we're gonna use the next command, that is basically I need to go to this particular path and try to run the bat file, or we do also have a PowerShell file, which I'm going to run it the PowerShell file here. Then we need to run the pip install, basically the prerequisite installation in the virtual environment, which we need to do now. And then you can go ahead and try to run the CDK commands. The CDK commands like synthesis, ls, deploy, diff, and docs. So if you see what are all those commands do, you can find those helpful commands, that is CDK list. Basically, it's list the stacks in the app. Synthesis emits the synthesized CloudFormation template. Deploy, which actually runs the the CloudFormation template. Difference compares the difference between the state, that is basically the state that is present in the AWS account and the state that you define in the file. Then the CDK docs, which is basically an open document, right? So this is the command which we have run, and it has created a very nice project for us. Now before I run to the next command, I'm going to quickly walk you through the files and going to help you to understand what are all these files and folders are all about. So we have a source.bat file which you can ignore. So this is the requirement.txt file, which is basically, it tells about what are all the prerequisite modules that need to be installed in the virtual environment. Remember that in this video, I'm trying to basically run the CDK from a virtual environment. Virtual environment in the Python context is basically an independent, isolated environment where you're gonna install your own required, the modules of particular version and try to run your Python codes there. That is what the virtual environment in Python. So here we are using these libraries of the Python, construct and AWS CDK labs. And then this is dev is basically, again, if you are using for example, say dev environment, which you can ignore it. Readme is basically, this is the readme of the project, okay, not my repository, okay. Then you have a cdk.json, which you can explore. This is basically by default created JSON file. And then we have a very nice file called, if you see here, we have app.py file. So remember that if you are a Python developer, you might have seen the project of Flask, where when you actually create a Python Flask project, it creates an app.tf file, and from there you actually orchestrate the application execution, right? So this is same exactly, it does the same thing here. So basically this is a root app file which is actually creates a CDK app. With using the CDK app, you are actually running the CDK resources, or basically you are invoking the CDK APIs, which is under the hood calls the AWS APIs only, by using a template. Basically, this app is helping you to generate the template, that is CloudFormation template, which actually creates a stack in the AWS account, right? So this is the root file, which is, if you see here, it has the import OS. Then if you see that it is importing the AWS CDK, then it is importing the local folder of this particular project, that is demo CDK lab Python one. In that one, we have a class called this class. Class is being imported here. Then it is constructing an app. Then it is calling that class basically, right? And then it is actually running a synthesis project. In the sense, it is basically synthesizing the project. Then we have a, so git ignore, you can ignore it because it just constructs contain, what are all the things it needs to ignore, yeah. And then we have the test. Basically, this is where you can run, basically create test cases of your application. So it contains like a unit test cases, right? So if I go inside the unit test cases, if you see that, here it also has the test cases, that is test if SQS queue is created or not, right? So basically, it is actually, also has a space where you can test if the infrastructure is created or not. So it is using the app, and then it is actually from the class, it is actually creating that object, and then it is actually using the assert method, right? So and then it is verifying that the particular queue is created or not. So this is basically a folder where you can create a test cases of your infrastructure, right? So then I will go to the next folder, which is basically kind of a root of everything. Basically, this is a folder which contains a Python file which will actually creates the resources in the AWS account. So here we have a init.tf file, which is actually basically initializes the the execution of Python file present under this folder. And then if you see here, we have the very nice code here that is actually importing the CDK. From the CDK, it is actually importing the duration, stack, resources. Then from the AWS SQS, it is calling the SQS, the module. Then we are actually using the construct module and creating a construct one, yeah. And then this is the default class. Underneath the default class, we have a default function, that is int function. So this is underscore init function is a function which gets automatically executed when you create the object, or basically this is a default constructor, something like that, yeah. So here what we do is, in this video we're going to spin up a SQS queue, as I said. So I'm going to uncomment these codes because so basically when you actually start up the CDK project with using the CDK init, right? So this is basically, it will tell you to create an example resource, that is queue, right? So we're going to spin up these resources as a part of this demo as well, right? So for that sake, I'm just uncommenting this, and rest all option I'm going to keep it default. Right, so basically this is a quick walkthrough of the the source code folder that is created by command, that is so that is CDK init app, yeah. All right, so now we go to the next command and try to realize how quick, how efficient the AWS CDK for Python helps us to spin up the infrastructure. The next command is basically we need to go to this particular path, that is virtual environment. So what you do is, I'm gonna go to this particular path, right? And if I tell you the ls, so here we have lot many files. So in that one, I'm going to run activate ps1 file. So if I go to this virtual environment, go to the script, and we have a nice PowerShell file which actually activates the the virtual environment, yeah. So I'm going to close it for now, and then we're going to go back to the terminal, right? So I think it went outside. So yeah, let me go back to this particular folder again. Since I have went into that particular file, that it got the basically it actually came out of the loop, basically, yeah. So what we have to do is we have to again go to the what I can go to this particular path, that is particular demo, right? So what we do is I'm going to go to the yeah, so let me do a ls. So we have this folder, so let me go to this folder, that is demo. So demo folder, and then from from folder, I need to run the command, same command, that is basically cd virtual environment, right? So now we are here. The next command is basically activate the virtual environment. So by running the the activate.ps1 file, what we are doing is we are actually activating an isolated Python runtime environment. So this is an environment where you can run the Python modules of your own required versions and try to run your application in the isolated space, right? So we are here now. What do I do is, so basically being here, so now we have activated the virtual environment which is needed for our application. Now to run this application, what I do is I have to go to the next commands. The next command is you need to come back outside this particular path, yeah, and then maybe, yeah, so you do cd a couple of times, right? So you are in the basically you are in the virtual environment now. So once you are in the virtual environment, basically what you can do is now you can try to run the next command, that is basically pip install requirement.txt file. So in the requirement.txt file, as I said, it is actually to install the certain modules. So why we need to install? If I go to this particular script, you see that there are certain modules which are not identified yet. So we're gonna run that. So basically we're gonna run the pip install. Basically what it's saying is basically, it cannot find the requirement, right? So we need to go back again to cd dot again, right? So again, right, so I have to come out of the dot virtual environment folder, and we have the requirement.txt file here. So I need to run that pip install requirement file from that particular context. That's what the error says. So we did that. Basically we came one step behind, or basically one directory behind, and then we run the pip install, and you see that now it is executing all those commands. So I'm going to close it, the folders, and then I'm going to show you that once it is installed, we see that all these modules are getting recognized in the virtual environments. Currently it is actually installing the modules. While it is installing the modules, I'm going to go on a pause and come back. Now you see that it has actually installed all the modules, and then you see that so it is basically, it should be recognizing now. If I go to the particular project, so if I go to the app.json, and then everything looks to be installed basically, right? What we are doing is we're gonna go to the next command, that is basically, let's try to see if it can synthesize now. In the sense, now we have set our application, that is CDK application, as expected. Now we can go and try to deploy the project, or basically try to init the project, see the output, and then you can actually deploy the project. Okay, so when we run the command, that is basically CDK init, there it gave us a particular command that we need to execute, right? So that I have already walked through. So now we're going to rerun those commands which I have explained you. So CDK synthesis is basically it actually executes the project and tries to identify that what the infrastructure it has to spin up in your targeted the environment, right? So this is very cool command which is actually outputs the CloudFormation template. If I can show you the CloudFormation template, that we're going to run it here now. So here if you see that, so I did run command, that is CDK synthesis. It actually giving me an output of a template. So this is basically a CloudFormation template. If you see that it is actually creating a SQS queue, and then the so basically all other are the properties. We have given visibility and the name of the SQS queue. So basically it is creating that, and it will create only in a region that is basically in a US West 2. Yeah, and the rest all our commands basically are the parameters. You see that we have parameters and we have a rules as well. Okay, so this is what synthesis is nothing but like a Terraform plan in the Terraform world. The next one is basically CDK diff. So I'm going to run this command CDK diff, because CDK diff is basically, it will show you the difference between the desired state, the state that is present in the AWS console, and then the state that you are defined in the source code. Generally there are no resources. If I go to the AWS account, this is my AWS account, we are in the Oregon region. It does not has an infrastructure which we are looking for. So it should show the same, that is basically it should show that it has to create all these resources. So you see that it has a parameter, it has the conditions, and it is saying me that hey, we're going to create a resource called SQS queue in your account. Right, so this is basically, it gives a summary about the CloudFormation template. Now we can run that CloudFormation template by running a command, that is basically CDK deploy. Right, so if you are trying to connect the dots between the Terraform, how the Terraform works and how does the CDK works, you see there are a lot many similarities, right? So basically Terraform looks to be very the straightforward way, that is right. So here there are lots of prerequisites, but under the hood, remember that this is basically, you are actually spinning the infrastructure which is written in the Python code. Terraform, it has its own HashiCorp language. Okay, that is the difference. So if you see here, it is, we have run the command, that is a CDK deploy, which actually has started to deploy the resources. If I go to the AWS account and try to refresh parallelly, so currently we don't see any resource creation process in progress. But if I go to the CloudFormation, we should see a CloudFormation stack being deployed here. So the CloudFormation stack, as I said, it will be deployed by the name that we give our folder. So if you see that, this is basically, CDK considers that a folder is equal to one stack, like that. Yeah, or again, you can connect the one stack to another stack. That is basically a very high level usage of CDK, which I'm going to explain in the new videos as well. And again, so this is basically how to execute the CDK application from isolated virtual environment. But we can also execute this the .py file or CDK file, irrespective of whether we have this many infrastructure definition or not, or irrespective of do we really need all those the files and folders. Definitely not. but there is another method for it which I'm going to explain it in another video. So for now, I have executed a CDK deploy, which I'm going to show you that, how does that log looks like it has executed very fastly, and the resources also sped up. So we did run command, that is CDK deploy. It actually the synthesized, and it created, if you see here, the deployment time it has taken is 54 seconds, and then it created a stack with this name, that is CloudFormation stack ERN. So inside this, what is that? It is actually created resource, which you can see in this summary, right? All right, so if I go to the AWS account and try to see that, so we have the stack which is basically created. If you go to the resources, you should see SQSQ resources basically, and then in the output you can show that, basically again, if you go to the stack insert info, you can do it, right? And then go to the events, you can see that, events of creation as well, resources. You can see the template. So this is the template which is in a JSON format, right, which is getting shown here as well. Now we go to our actual resources which we desire, right? So here we have the SQSQ being created. All right, so basically, here I have shown you that, that how we can create the resources with using CDK, right? Now from the scratch to creation of a resource we have done. Now think about a lifecycle management. When I say lifecycle management, you might be, so first you thought that, hey, my queue name is this. No, then later you say that, no, my queue name should be this. That is basically second, right? Say like that, you need to have a different name. How do you do that? It's very simple. You go to this particular stack and try to rename the queue something like this. I change the queue by a small character. Now what we do is we're gonna try to deploy it again. So before you deploy, what you can do is you can do a CDK diff again and try to deploy it. Basically, it will create the modified queue. So what you do is basically we are actually renaming the queue, right? So there is no option of renaming the queue in AWS. So to rename the queue, you need to delete the old queue and create a new queue. That is what the option is basically, right? If I go to this one, go to the resources, do you see anywhere like the basically edit? You cannot edit the name, right? Do we? So no, right? So we cannot edit the queue name. Now that is what actually even CDK stack will do. So basically what will happen is, it will actually destroy the old queue and try to create a new queue, because you are demanding the new queue name, right? And that is what exactly CDK diff, the diff will show us. It shows that, I'm going to delete the old one, and we're going to create a new queue name which you have defined like this. Now once you are good with it, you can run always command, that is CDK deploy. So you run the command, that is basically CDK deploy, which again does the same job, which is actually destroys the old resources and creates a new resources. So that process you can actually try to see in the logging here. If you see here, it is actually synthesizing it. Looks like it has already synthesized, and then it is actually deploying the stack. That also you can visualize in the resources as well here. So if I go to the CloudFormation stack, so under the hood, what happening is, this CDK is nothing but an abstraction layer which actually generates a CloudFormation template on the fly, and then when you do a CDK deploy, it actually execute that particular CDK. So the particular CloudFormation template to deploy the stack on the AWS account. Okay, under the hood, this is basically abstracting you to learn what is CloudFormation and all on that. So you don't need to learn CloudFormation template when you know AWS CDK. That is what I can tell. Yeah, that's how. So if you refresh it, you should see that it is currently in update in progress as well. So if I refresh in the SQS queue, so you can see that the another queue will be get created here, and then so then that is also can be visualized here. You see that creation is initiated basically. If I go back to the resource again, so I'm going to refresh it here. So we should see two resources. You see that now we had a resource ending with Q2. This is our new resources. This is our old resources. Now let me refresh it and see that we should have one queue. So you see that we have one queue and the other queue got removed basically. If I refresh it, we should see that the basically update the update complete cleanup is in progress. So this is very quick process as well. So the whatever I have shown in the visual aspects of my AWS account, so that is actually happening same here in the in this here as well, right? So after a couple of seconds, it should go green basically, or it should complete. So cleanup, if you see here, the update is cleanup is done, and that should be replicated here as well. Here you go. So we have actually updated the complete CDK stack, right? And we have renamed the queue, which is basically destroyed the old queue and kept it the new queue which we created. All right. So now we are done with the modification as well. Now let me explain you destroy as well. Now let's say that you don't want the infrastructure. You can always destroy the stack by running something like this. Yeah, so let me run this command. That is basically, remember that CDK destroy is very destructive command. You need to run it very carefully. So basically it will destroy the infrastructure. Basically it will destroy your our infrastructure. Here is SQSQ, which we define in this particular file, that will be destroyed. If you see that, it will say that, are you sure that you want to delete? So yes, I want to delete it, which means that I'm authorizing this particular application to destroy it. Right, so remember that you always do it in a careful, because it's going to destroy it. Yeah. So if you see here, now go back to the the CloudFormation, you see that now delete is in progress, right? So which means that it's going to delete the complete stack from the from the bottom. All right, and all right, so this is basically it's going to delete it in a couple of seconds. For now, I'm going to go on a pause and come back once the deletion gets completed. Okay, actually it didn't take more time. It deleted in a couple of seconds. If you see here, it destroyed the complete resources and even the stack as well. If I refresh, we should not see any queue. So queue is not there, and then our stack is also getting deleted. All right, so with that note, I have shown you the things need to be shown in this video from scratch to end. Finally, finally a quick request. Please do subscribe my channel. That would really help me to do these kind of videos more ahead as well. Thank you. Thanks a lot, and see you in the next video.